Episode 21, Fina MacDonell.
All right, cut to edge of stage. Great. All right, color frost.
Check. 1, 2, 3. Check.
Stand by, please. House to half, house out, letting cues 1 through 10, sound cues 1 through 10.
And welcome back to The Title Block, a podcast about Canadian theatre designers, their history, and their craft. And I am, of course, your host, Michael Kruse, here on The Title Block. And this week, I bring to you an interview I did in the summer with props master and one of the founders of the Rabbit's Choice prop shop. That's right, Fina MacDonell. She is also a silver ticket winner from the Dora Mavor Awards this summer, so we'll have a chat about that right at the end. But first, we talk about her life, her early life, which included some acting jobs and performance. In fact, some seminal work there on the Farm Show, which is a really interesting conversation. I do have to remind you that this, of course, show is supported by patrons on the Patreon network. So if you go to patreon.com/the Title Block podcast, you'll be able to find our Patreon page. And I urge you, if you like the show, please support it. There's only about 4 supporters right now, so it's not very many people, but that's okay. I'm sure you guys can do it. Just a couple bucks an episode will be great. It gives me an incentive to actually get more episodes out a month. Speaking of which, I know that I've been very, very busy this fall and unable to make the time before today to get the episode out. So I'm a couple weeks late. Sorry about that. Of course, the Patreon subscribers got their episode about a week ago. And so they've already enjoyed and know what's going on in this podcast. So if you want to be part of that group, just go to patreon.com/the Title Block podcast. And again, please tell your friends about this. I know that a lot of you listeners are currently in university, studying theater at that level. That's the audience we're kind of focused on. Or you're in the industry and want to know more about the people that you work with and about the theater history, the rife, the sort of rich theater history we have here in Canada. So thank you very much for your support. Please tell your friends about it if you like the show. Certainly, go to Facebook. We're at Facebook/the Title Block podcast. We're on Twitter at the Title Block CA. That's at the Title Block CA, capital C, capital A. And remember to go to the website because we have show notes there. I go through the show and I pick up links on the web on the internet to interesting things we talk about in the show, so you can learn more about Canadian theatre. And that pretty much is a running commentary there on the show notes. So go check that out at thetitleBlock.com. All right. Well, that's all the stuff I have to talk to you about right now. Enjoy the show. Here's my interview with Fina MacDonell. Fina MacDonell is the co-owner of the Rabbit's Choice prop shop in Toronto, Ontario, and has had a long and varied career in Canadian theatre as an actor and builder, with her props featured in the original Canadian production of Phantom of the Opera and many other productions from Queen Street to Broadway. Fina, welcome to the Title Block.
Thank you.
Awesome. Fina is also the recent winner of the Silver Ticket Award from the Dora Mavor Awards here in Toronto, so we'll talk about that a bit later.
Okay.
But first, tell me how you started in theater. What was your first experience and how did you decide to do this as a career?
When I was 5, I grew up in Winnipeg, and when I was 5, my parents decided that it would be a good thing if they exposed me to a little culture. So they took me to Rainbow Stage, which is a summer theater program, and they do fabulous musicals. And then that went very well, so they thought when I was 6 that they would start taking me to plays at the Manitoba Theatre Centre. And so from the time I was 6 till the time I moved away from home at 17, I saw, I think, every production done at Rainbow Stage and at MTC, which gave me an incredible theatrical education. Just amazing. Everything from Brecht to The Music Man. Very cool.
And what dates are important. Mm-hmm. So what year was this? When were you?
I was born in 1952, so I was 5 in 1957 and 6 in 1958. So very close to the forming of both those theater companies.
That's incredible. I didn't realize they went back that far. That's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
And Rainbow Stage is outside.
Yep.
And I talked to Ed Coaten in February about his
cool.
experience out there. We had a great conversation about his life out in Winnipeg, designing there. Was there anything, since that was your first experience, what did you find special about the theater, or did you find exciting about going to Rainbow Stage? Was it the musical?
It was magic.
Model?
It was. I got to see a whole other world very differently than I saw when I read about it, because I taught myself to read when I was like 3 or 4. So it was all there. The landscape, the clothes, the people were right there in front of you.
That's incredible. And to have that experience at MTC and go to see every production during that period must have been incredible. That's amazing. Was there anything that stands out as something you remember as a really singular experience when you were seeing stuff at MTC?
Oh, wow. Galileo, Mother Courage, Gaslight scared the pants off me. The 4-poster. Tons of them. I could almost everything.
Right.
If I think a little harder, you'll get a long list.
And did you start? You did some early training at MTC as well. Is that right?
Yeah, the Manitoba Theatre Centre, one Easter break. We didn't have March break at that point. It was just Easter. Had an open house at the theatre, and The Caretaker, another great show, was what was on stage. And the cast of The Caretaker came out and talked to this audience of kids. And I would have been about 13, I think, at the time. And the stage manager talked a little bit, and I think even the designer talked a little bit. And I had an epiphany, and that was that I could do this really wonderful, magical thing that I had been watching other people do. And at the end of the kind of little performance that they had done, they pitched the theater school, and I signed up.
That's awesome. And how long did you do the theater school at MTC?
I did it from the time I was 14 to 17, so three years.
And who was there as a mentor, and what kind of experiences did you have?
Fantastic experiences. There was a staff, David Barnett, who then went to the University of Alberta, David Latham, and then they had people who were doing shows actors come over. So there was a woman, I cannot remember her name, but she was in A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum. And she came over, and for, I think, 4 or 6 weeks, she gave us classes in period dancing. Powys Thomas, who later went to BC to form a theater school there, came. He was at MTC quite a lot, so we often had him as an acting instructor. So just all kinds of people we were exposed to. We learned to fence. We learned to observe. We learned to do scene work. We learned to improvise.
All very important.
Yeah.
Now, you started out as an actor, right?
Mm-hmm.
At 17, what happened? Did you go to theater? Did you go to university, or how did you continue this career?
Well, at 17, we went on tour for the theater school and toured all through rural Manitoba. My boyfriend was also on the tour, and I was pregnant by the end of it. So I got married, moved to Montreal, where my then husband was finishing his stint at the National Theatre School. And then in the midst of the FLQ crisis, we thought maybe we should get out of Montreal. So we came back home to Winnipeg, and my husband got a job at MTC, and so we stayed. And by the time Arwen, my daughter, was about 5 months old, I had reconnected with some of my theater school friends, and we formed a theater company. We got Opportunities for Youth grant, and we also did a pitch to the Manitoba Cultural people, and we toured elementary schools, and we had a performance space outdoors during the summer of 1972, I think. Yeah. And did shows, which is, actually, no, 1971, which is where I met Paul Thompson, because he came to see our show. and remembered me because I was performing. We were doing the witch's scene from Macbeth, and I had Arwen on my hip, and he was struck by the fact that a witch had a baby.
That would be a Paul Thompson thing to recognize. How can I work that into a show? That sounds great.
Yeah.
And from there, he invited you to go to the farm show. Is that right?
About a year later, I lived in a house with a bunch of other people, and we had a room to rent, and I was working in the costume department at MTC, learning how to sew and cut costumes. We rented a room to a gent who was performing at MTC, and then he came back to Toronto where he lived to do a show at Pass Muraille. Got to talking to Paul. Paul realized that this guy knew me, and then asked me to come out and do farm show.
That's great. I should mention that we're actually in the Rabbit's Trace shop, so there's a lot of traffic outside, including ambulances. That's great. Now, what was the name of the company you started in Winnipeg?
The Patchwork Players.
The Patchwork Players. And was it all original work, or was it...
It was largely fairy tale based. Mm-hmm. So we had a patchwork cape, and we'd get the kids to choose patches. Mm-hmm. And depending on what patch you chose, that would determine the story you heard. So we generally did 3 stories and 2 songs.
That sounds awesome.
It was fun.
And was it all a young company? You guys were in your early 20s or late teens, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's pretty incredible.
I think the oldest was 24. No, 22.
That's pretty awesome. The fact that you guys got grants and stuff from Manitoba, that's awesome. That's terrific. I love that kind of... That seems to be... I don't know about the American experience, but I have several friends who... that sort of theatrical entrepreneurship is a common experience for a lot of people in Canada, right?
Interesting.
I certainly did it when I was in my teens. We started a company as well, so it was.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it was. The audacity of it.
It's the best thing in the world.
It's great. You know, like what? Of course we're going to start. We're going to do our own work. We're going to tour. Why not, right? And now I would think, oh God, that seems like it's such a risk. But when you're 18, what's a risk?
It's
right?
the beauty of youth, man.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So now Paul Thompson gets in contact with you.
Yeah.
To this connection and says, come to Ontario. Is that right?
Yeah.
And what did you...
I said, okay.
Yeah. Wasn't a big deal.
I was 20. I was ready to go somewhere else.
Yeah. And tell me about the experience of traveling here and getting established. He invited you to work specifically on the farm show, right? What was that like when did you know what you were getting into?
Not a clue.
No way? So what was it like coming to Clinton, Ontario to start the process?
It was pretty wild. I just turned 20, and everybody was older. Some of them were really old, like 37. I was really old. Everybody had much more experience than I. Miles had actually gone to university to study theater. So I was a little bit intimidated. Not really interested in letting anybody know that, but a little intimidated. And then it was just amazing. From being a prairie girl and being able to walk across the road and pick pears from a tree was incredible. And then meeting all of these amazing farmers with amazing stories and the generosity to share them with us. And watching Anne and Janet Amos and Miles Potter do their thing on stage. It was cool. It was beyond cool.
So for those people who don't know, the farm show was a collaborative production, but it was based on interviews of farmers. So describe that experience. Was that something new that the company that Paul Thompson had kind of invented at that point, or what was your experience talking to those people and how did they receive it?
Well, to backtrack a little bit, I think that Joan Littlewood in Britain started the process of, or was one of the first people to do the process of the actors coming together, researching the subject matter of a show, and then putting together a play from what they had learned, what they improvised in rehearsal and so on. And the first play I saw was at MTC called Oh, What a Lovely War, which came out of that workshop process. I think it was just in the air. We had done something similar with Che Guevara when I was in theater school, and I think that kind of process was just out there. Paul, I think, was on the crest of the wave that began to expose Canadians to themselves and ordinary Canadians to themselves. So that was exciting and a little weird. It was a little weird walking into the homes of grown-ups and asking them questions about themselves and trying to remember it and watching them for their physical mannerisms and then taking it back into rehearsal and presenting it to everyone else. And in some instances, there were commonalities, and so those commonalities, sometimes we pooled all of them together and made up a scene that would incorporate something that obviously happened to everybody, but there wasn't a standout story amongst the people that we'd spoken to.
And how long did the process of research and rehearsal take? Was it months or weeks or?
I think we were there for 6 weeks.
And where did the funding come from? Did you guys have grants or did you guys just strike
I have
on
no
this?
idea. They gave me a very small paycheck and, that was it. I have no idea where the money came from.
It's a mystery to me too. We'll have to find out. Well, that's great. And I just want to go through the names too. Paul Thompson, Janet Amos, Anne England. We spoke about her. David Fox as well, right? Al Jones.
Yeah, and Miles Potter. Yeah.
Al Jones is the one name that I don't know, probably because I'm ignorant.
He left the show when we were going to bring it back to Toronto. I think he hadn't enjoyed the process, and I don't know now if he thought it was a valuable thing or not. But anyway, he left the show, and I think a few years afterwards left theater.
All right. And you performed it in Clinton first?
Yeah.
Okay.
We performed it in Ray Bird's barn.
Where is that in Clinton? Is that just a...
I think it's rural Route 3. It's about a 15 to 20-minute drive out of Clinton.
So a working farm?
Yeah.
Yeah. And how was that experience? Was it well received by the locals?
I think it was the scariest thing I've ever done in my life. The barn was packed. We'd put up hay bales, sort of bleachers made out of hay bales. And I think we had maybe expected that maybe 20 or 30 people would come. And when we peeked into the barn about 15 minutes before the show was to start, it was packed to and above the rafters, like kids were sitting on the rafters. And I think it occurred to all of us pretty much simultaneously that we were about to step in front of real people that we'd talked to who had told us secrets. And we were about to broadcast those secrets to their family and their families and their neighbors. And I didn't know whether we were going to be stoned to death or warmly received. Wow. So stepping out was incredible.
Yeah. And then you brought it to Toronto.
Yes.
And you said that before that you had added the names back in.
Yeah.
When you came to Toronto. Were they the real names, the people you spoke to, or was it? Yeah. And how was it received here? Well,
I'll tell you about Clinton first. So we start the play with little vignettes, 5-minute, 3-minute, 2-minute speeches of different people. And as we went through, you could see, because it was daylight and there were no lights, so we could see the audience clearly. You could see people turning to one another and poking one another or pointing to the person down the row, and everybody'd sort of lean over and wink. And it was incredible. It was an incredible rush, and quite delightful to see, and people laughing at themselves and people, crying for their neighbors. And it just was a fabulous, fabulous experience. And we did 2 afternoons. And the second afternoon, there were even more people. And a lot of people came back. So that meant a great deal. When we did it in Clinton, one would start a speech and just go, and the audience would recognize you. We realized when we got into rehearsals for Toronto that no one knew these people, and the names were important, and it was important to be able to trace who the families were, which you couldn't do without names. So, no, we used the real names.
And you said at some point you went on a tour of auction barns with the show. Was that after Toronto, or was that?
Yeah, that was after Toronto. So Toronto we performed, I think, September, October. And then we went out on the road in late March, early April, and toured auction barns, cattle barns. There were generally cows and pigs sharing the dressing rooms with us. And we performed in the auction ring, and that was fun and interesting to see how the differing farm communities responded. Little fine details that one group would, if they were cattle farmers primarily in that area, they would respond differently than the soybean farmers. And then we finished with a performance in Stratford. And I guess the town had rented the festival theater, and we packed it out. And that was a really wonderful, wonderful thing.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And was there something that these are your formidable years as a theater creator. Is there anything that you took from that experience that informs your career now? Like, it seems like that'd be...
Yeah, everything is collective.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is collective. You don't do anything on your own. And in point of fact, here at Rabbits, with any given prop, there's usually 4 or 5 sets of hands that touch it before it leaves the shop.
Right. And we'll get to your how Rabbits started in a second, or how you got into props. But I wanted to touch on homemade theater as well. This is something that, as I said before in the pre-interview, that I had not heard of before in Toronto, and this is probably important to talk about.
Yeah.
How did... First of all, tell us about what homemade theater is, or was, how it got started, and your original role in that company.
Homemade theater was started in Toronto in the early 1970s. Phil Savath, Larry Mullen, Fred Mullen, and Barry Flatman. Barry is the only Canadian. The other 3 were American, perhaps having draft issues, and so perhaps choosing to come to Canada for that period of time. They were, I think, the craziest people I've ever met. Wonderful, wonderful, talented, incredibly bright, interested in doing satire and wild, wild things. They had a TV show on CBC for a long time, called Homemade TV. And I don't know a lot about their inception, but I started working with them and had a lot of fun.
One of the major venues here in Toronto is we used to call it the Ice House. People still call it the Ice House occasionally, but it's the Queen's Quay Theatre. Now it's called it's got some sponsor name or something.
I don't know.
It used to be the Du Maurier Theatre Centre, and then it got changed after they got rid of those. They changed the laws on cigarette advertising. You were in a production called Dick Foran's Holiday Cruise there. Tell us about that, because it sounded pretty incredible about how they ran it.
Dick Foran's Holiday Cruise was preceded by Dick Foran's Disasterland, which was done in a warehouse on Duncan Street. And it involved building a plane in the warehouse, and the audience or passengers on the plane were brought in, seated. The stewardess did the obligatory instructions at the beginning, and then all kinds of wild and wacky disasters happened outside the windows of the plane. And obviously audience participation factored into it. So the next foray was Dick Foran's Holiday Cruise. We built a cruise ship in the ice house, and since it was a huge, empty, lovely space, we had, quite a large-sized boat prow, and a lot of the action happened on deck. Again, the passengers were welcomed, were brought onto the ship, and we set sail, so to speak. and interacted with the audience all the way through the show.
And this is when you were still acting.
Yeah.
I think that the newspaper called you the leggy Fina MacDonell. I think that's what the Globe and Mail called you. Oh, as I knock everything off the table.
That's all right.
That's great. And that sounds, it's incredible to me that, this is the arrogance of youth as well. I see site-specific and immersive experiences in the last 10 or 15 years. You go, oh, it's so cutting edge. It's so different. And this is not something new. People have been doing this for a long time.
For a long time.
Yeah. It seems to me that that's what theater should be doing a lot of the time. Like that seems to be something special that you can't get anywhere else, right? Not on film or television or YouTube or anything like that. And tell us about the Ice House, because you were there before the renovation.
It was spectacularly beautiful. I don't know how high the ceiling is, but it's enormous. It must be 4 or 5 stories high. And so it's brick all the way up, and then the ceiling, and it was a huge, beautiful, empty space. Very inspirational, very unlike anything that I've ever experienced since.
Do you remember how it became a theater venue? Was it just abandoned for so many years or not, or unused? Did someone went,
unused, fell out of use. And I think with the ferment that was happening in theater in Toronto, and probably worldwide, but certainly in Toronto, lots of new companies forming, lots of, you seek out performance spaces. And homemade theater was really tuned into finding unusual places to perform.
And this is in the late 70s, right?
Yeah, that's right.
The holiday cruise occurred in 1978 or something like that, I think. And what happened to the company? It just sort of dissolved, or everyone moved on?
Yeah, everybody, I think Fred is a musician, and I think wanted to focus more on his music career. People got married, people had babies, people moved to be where their loved ones were. So it, I think it reached its natural finish, and people moved on.
And give us a list of the people you can remember who were designers on those experiences. Remember the people who did the Disaster Land?
Disaster Land would have been Bill Fleming, and I believe he did Holiday Cruise as well.
Mm-hmm. And designed the whole thing?
Yep.
Okay. And any lighting designers? There must have been. I can only imagine now the Ice House is a quite pleasant place to light in, because there's so many different choices you can make. Back then with a big empty box, it tends to be a bit of a challenge to get lighting and or sound up there into those big reaches, right?
There was a big moon puppet. And we went up in a lift and hung it from the rafters. And at one point, because a lot of my acting career, I tended to do other things as well. So I had helped build the moon puppet and went up on the scaffolding to do some paint touch-ups, and some of the rigging had come loose. So, it was on the rafters, and I think a lot of the lighting pipes were hung from the rafters as well.
That's incredible. I love the idea of a moon puppet.
Yeah. Okay,
so now we get into your prop career. How did you find your way into props? Did you do some original training, or was it something you just stumbled upon? Or
I went to the Banff School of Fine Art for a summer program in 1967, and it was a great program. It was, I think, primarily acting-based, but wanted to give the students a bit of an insight into all aspects of theater. So they taught us how to canvas a flat and how to do a Dutchman, which nobody even knows anymore.
Nobody knows what a Dutchman
Nope, exactly. And as part of that, they taught us, we built props for the musical and the opera that were done by the school, and then toured Alberta and came back. And I guess I had something that people thought was interesting, because I went on tour with both those shows as the sort of running props person. So that was my, kind of biggest entree into the world of props. And then the rest of the time, if you're working particularly as an actor in theater, you have to do other stuff. And so I made costumes, I ran follow spots, I did box office, I did props. I built puppets. I worked for the Canadian Puppet Festivals for 2 years. Again, not steadily, but that certainly gave me some skills that I hadn't had before.
And what was your first? When did you get hired to be a full-time props person? What was that?
That was at Young People's Theatre. Astor Jansen had hired me to build puppets for the Royal Winnipeg Ballet for a production of The Firebird, and she had secured the prop shop at Young People's Theatre for the work to be done in. So I spent the summer building puppets in that shop and sort of got to know some of the people who were around for the summer and got to know the administrative staff and finished the puppets. They went to Winnipeg. That was great. And about 3 months later, YPT called me and said, hey, we're short a props person. Do you want to come and be head of props? Not really having the experience to do that job, but it was a job and I knew that I would enjoy it. And they figured I was a props person because I'd been in the prop shop, which means you're a prop person, right? So that was my start at YPT, and that was in 1982.
And how did you feel about showing up at your first day? I mean, you had built puppets, but you didn't have sort of standard apprenticeship at any large prop shop. Did you have to?
Well,
do a
I
whole
was
bunch of
I was
makeup?
I was familiar with the shop, which helped, and I was familiar with some of the people, and that helped. And I figured I could just figure the rest out as we went along, which is kind of what I did.
Yeah, that's awesome. And what were the first shows you built there? Do you remember anything that you'd worked on?
Romeo and Juliet. I remember that I built some beautiful goblets and discovered that sometimes materials interact with each other in unpleasant ways.
How so?
Well, I thought that, fortunately the props person who had been there previously there were a lot of materials in the shop. So I looked around and I thought, oh, here's some blue styrofoam. I can carve the shape of the goblet out of it. And here's some copper tubing. I can make a nice twisty shape. Mary Kerr was the designer for that. A nice twisty shape, and then make a base out of plywood. And the first set of goblets I made, I then covered with gesso and sanded it over the styrofoam, so I got a nice smooth finish. I ran out of gesso, got some more, did the next set of 6 goblets, set them aside to dry, came in the morning, picked one up, and the whole thing shattered in my hand. Because there was a solvent in the second pot of gesso. They weren't the same, and I didn't know enough to realize that you probably should try and match. Right. So there was a solvent in that gesso, and overnight it had skinned, so that nice solvent had a chance to eat away all of the styrofoam. Right. Oh my God.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
And quite disappointing to come in and have to redo all that work as well, right? That's terrific. Now, you made a decision. I mean, that basically started you on your road to being a full-time props person, right?
Yeah.
How did Rabbit's Choice come about? Because working for a small company, but working in a shop that somebody else owns and making your own.
We wanted
business.
Windows.
Right? Yes, there are no windows in the prop shop at YPT, are there?
No.
It's as simple as that. Who's your business partner is?
Don McGoldrick.
Don McGoldrick. And how did you guys meet?
He was the scenic carpenter at YPT.
Oh, there you go. That's
convenient. So we obviously collaborated on a lot of stuff while we were there. And YPT had been considering and talking to everybody in the building about renting or purchasing a production facility so that the shops could be bigger and so that we could have windows and just everything would be more efficient and better. And I, amongst probably everybody else in the basement, which is way below ground level, we're really looking forward to the windows. And I don't know exactly what happened, but as it transpired, there was no money or ceased to be enough money to do that. So the dream of being able to look at the sky in the morning or at night or in the afternoon went away. And Don and I talked about it, and he then left YPT and went on to work with other people. And we continued to talk, and after a while we thought, well, maybe we could just start our own company, because, there were a number of small theater companies in Toronto that didn't have props people on staff, so we figured there was probably a market, and YPT said, yeah, we'll stick with you for at least a year and see how it works out, and that was the beginning.
All right, we're taking just a little bit of a break here. Just to remind you again to go to patreon.com/the Title Block Podcast and click on Become a Patron so you can support the show and make sure we get these out on time to you and get more episodes out. You'll also be supporting things like trips across the country to visit with designers in person in places other than Toronto, and supporting special interest podcasts like the audience show we did in the spring and the CITT visit I did last year when we had a discussion about projection design. So please go to patreon.com/the Title Block Podcast, click on Become a Patron, and give us your support. And we'll continue to get these episodes out. Don't worry, they'll remain free for everybody, but you'll be doing me a great service and helping us get this podcast out to everyone on time and try to get as many episodes out as we can every month. So thank you very much for your support. And now back to our conversation with Fina MacDonell. And was your shop always here on Claremont?
Yes.
Or it was, eh?
Yeah.
So right from the beginning. What was the first big show you guys worked on, or first show for that matter? I mean, YPT was your first client?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we did a season with them. Mm-hmm. We were just finishing off a production of Damn Yankees at the Royal Alexandra when we moved into the shop in July of 1988. And then got rolling with the YPT season and got rolling with Phantom of the Opera.
Right. That seems to be... Now, you'd been building props for quite some time, and Don had lots of experience as well, so it doesn't seem too surprising you would get contracted out to do Phantom, but it does seem like a bit of a risk for them maybe to hire somebody local who had been just recently established as their own company, or is that surprising? Maybe that's not surprising.
I think we're all arrogant when we're younger.
Yeah.
Patrick Clark was the design associate on the show. And I don't know if you know how this works, but with the big shows, generally there's the big designer. And then they have an associate who does a lot of the drawings and oversees a lot of the shop work. And then there's the next tier down is the local design assistant. So in every city that the big shows are produced, there will be somebody local who oversees whatever is being built there. So I had worked with Patrick at Theatre Plus. He'd done a number of shows at Theatre Plus, and he designed them and I made the stuff. So we were familiar with each other, and he actually recommended us for the job. And there's elements of finance. There's elements of national and personal pride and ego, and I think all of those things came into play when Garth hired us.
That's incredible. And you guys built the production at the Pantages. Then there was the Pantages. Now it's the Edmund Rivers Theatre, I think, right? Yeah. Yeah.
And then we built the Canadian tour.
And then you built the tour.
Yeah.
Tell me about the experience of building the original show, first of all. How was it something that was that you had to innovate a lot on, or were all the ideas already sort of fleshed out enough that you could just follow the recipe from New York?
Well, it was a recipe from London.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Some of the stuff, there was tons of leeway. There were photographs, but not much else. Some of the stuff, like the throne, had dimensioned drawings, but no real indication of how the mechanism that makes the Phantom vanish should work. They were very generous. Jonathan Allen was the British design associate, and he was very generous with us in terms of talking stuff through and allowing us a bit of free rein to do what we wanted. And my business partner, Don, is very good at mechanical, interesting widget things. So he and I pooled our resources. We went to London. We watched the show. We did a backstage tour and looked at as much stuff as we could, and then came home and continued to sort of started the build. There was a ton of stuff. We had no idea what we were doing. We worked a lot. I have a picture of Don in the welding area, standing, but he's face down on the welding bench sleeping. We worked very, very long days, just trying to get it all done and also to figure out how to do it.
What were some particularly challenging pieces in that show? What were the things that you found the most interesting or challenging besides the mechanism, I guess, of the throne?
Well, just the throne itself, to try and figure out what the problems were and how to make them better. The throne has on the back of the seat there are two pillars on either side of the upholstered backrest, and I guess in previous productions they'd taken little bits of stuff and glued them onto either sonotube, cardboard tubing, or wooden columns. And one of the complaints that the design associate had was that these were always breaking and shipping off. And indeed, the first run, we tried that and did a few things differently. And, the roses chipped off, the things curled. It looked like terrible once it had been on stage for a little while. So we then made a mold of that pattern and cast it in rubber latex, which held up beautifully. Because that's something we always try and do, is to make the props last. Right. I don't want to see them back in the shop in a month and a half. They're done. They're gone.
I can imagine that's important.
Yeah.
Now, what about transferring to the tour? You guys had to do some modifications because the tour deck, for example, was only 7 or 8 inches deep. It wasn't very
that's
deep.
right.
So tell me about the candles and how that was attacked. Because the candles basically, I can't imagine anybody listening to this has not seen Phantom, but you never know. There are a bunch of candles that come up from the floor during the sewer boat scene, right? And
yes.
How was that attacked? Don just walked into the studio.
He's making faces at us because we're talking for so long.
That's right.
So in the production at the Pantages, of course, there's a trap room. There's tons of room under the deck. So the candles range in length from, I think, about 8 inches to just under 3 feet. And they were solid tubes of Teflon with little lights in the top, and they went onto a lift and just came up and down. Obviously, you can't do that in 6 inches of space. So we talked about it a bunch, and it became obvious that where there was space was laterally rather than horizontally. Or rather than vertically, rather. And so we thought about it again, and we figured that if we could make a spring or have a spring made, like a garage door spring, tightly wound, covered in Teflon to make it white, and could somehow drive that and make it turn and come up out of the stage, then we could get the whole candle out of the deck as the design required. So we bought a whole bunch of windshield wiper motors. We had some cogs custom made. We had garage door springs made. We had little metal boxes made, because there were 150 of these things. It wasn't like you could just sort of whip it off on your own over the weekend. And then we turned little Teflon tops so that when the light was on, you got that glow, that candle glow through the wax, through the Teflon. And put them all together, and there was some trial and error, and we finally got them working. But that was incredibly challenging and a lot of fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I remember doing the tour. I remember I was in theater school and I did the install in Kitchener.
Right.
And you would not believe how proud the touring crew was of the candles.
Cool.
When they came up, they were look at these
that's so
things. You can
cool.
run into them. They don't break. It's incredible. They were. I remember them going on about this after we installed the deck. It was really.
That's really neat to hear.
incredible.
That's very cool.
All right. Now this was the first of the big shows, but
Yeah.
you've done a whole bunch of other Broadway stuff.
Yeah.
Not only things that had originated in, or that were mounted in Toronto, but that originated in Broadway and other places. Just give us a quick, like, back of the envelope, list. Like, you've worked on Saigon.
Yeah,
here.
we worked on Miss Saigon and Crazy for You here. We did Lion King here. And then for Broadway, we've done The Producers, Spam-A-Lot, Young Frankenstein, Kiss Me Kate, Lion King, Scarlet Pimpernel. Can't remember anymore. There are lots.
That's a lot, yeah.
There are lots.
And now, do you guys still get a lot of work from New York? Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're obviously a shop that they trust
Yeah.
and can talk to.
Yeah.
That's important. What about locally? Do you remember Lucky Strike?
Yeah.
You were the designer, prop and costume designer on Lucky Strike, or the designer?
Yeah.
The only reason I bring it up is because
Which version?
Jim and I, the remount.
Okay.
Did you do the original one as well?
Yeah.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Awesome. Because Jim worked on that as well, the
Yeah.
original, I think.
Yeah.
What was your role in the original production?
Well, I did props and costumes.
So same thing.
So
And this
same
was
thing.
in the late 70s, early 80s?
Yeah, it would be, Arwen was 9 when we were at the Caravan, so it would be 1979.
Right. What was your experience on that production? It seemed like a pretty important one locally anyways.
Well, Harant is a madman, and he's brilliant. And actually, I'd done a show with him. I had acted in 2 shows for him, so I knew he was a madman. This is Harant Alianak, and he wrote the blues, which I did. I was in the original cast for, so I knew what I was getting into. But it was great. It was great to work with those people and try and find the texture of the design from Jim's rough sketches of the stage, and also to figure out the problems with the costumes and make them look and function the way they needed to.
And how was the remount? Was it much the same craziness, or was it a strict? Was there any redesign you had to do, or rethinking?
No, it was very much what it had been. Different performers, but very much what it had been. And what I love about Harant's work is that usually there's very loud music playing and everything is choreographed and there's dialogue, but rarely do you get to hear what's being said. You only know that people are shouting. And every once in a while there's a silence or a lessening of sound and you hear a key phrase. So it's really interesting to try and translate some of that energy into the props and the costumes. So the best I could do was to look up things in Arabic. And so on the matchbook, the iconic matchbook from Lucky Strike, I made a cover and wrote the word match in Arabic script on the cover. All the bales were labeled bales. All the barrels were labeled barrel. All the crates were labeled crate, which struck me as being intriguing, visually beautiful because the script is lovely. And later, when the show was running, I heard that a number of people who spoke Arabic had seen the show and were so pleased and so much enjoyed having things labeled the way they had been. They found it both, humorous and attractive. Yeah, so
that's great. All right, so let's talk about your process as a props builder and designer, for that matter. I have not. I'm a lighting designer. I'm not a set or costume designer, and I'm not. I don't really know about that relationship between designers and builders in the prop world, especially. Is it different for every show, or is there a certain number of steps you like to take that are the minimum standard by which you have to get something built?
It generally starts with a phone call, and then it varies from show to show. Sometimes we get a list. Sometimes we discuss everything over the phone. Sometimes we get drawings. Sometimes we get reference photos. We always ask when things are due, because that's sometimes the most important question. And then it's a lot of conversation with the designer. Typically, I ask if something gets danced on. And often I remember to ask how many people will be dancing on it. And I often ask how things feel, what sort of a feeling I should get off the object that we're being asked to produce. Because that often informs me more than anything else.
And is that the perspective from the actor who's manipulating the prop, or from the audience, or both?
Mainly from the designer.
Okay.
What do they... Is this supposed to convey a sense of luxury? Is this supposed to convey a sense of ickiness and filthiness? Is it supposed to be, does it feel ramshackle and about to fall apart? Does it feel heavy and precious?
That reminds me of the story you told me about the puppet, Alma Mahler's lover, and the puppet he had built of her.
Yes.
Tell me about that story again.
So this was a play done by Paul Thompson, Rahul Beneja, and Ida Holmes about Oskar Kokoschka, who was a painter. And he had an affair with Alma Mahler. She left to go on to her next lover. But he had become obsessed with her. So he commissioned a doll maker in Berlin to make a replica of Alma. And there's this incredible correspondence that was maintained between the two of them, with him talking about the kind of texture of fabric that he wanted on the doll, and what color of wine should be used to, tint her nipples, and very, very detailed. And his excuse was that he was doing a painting of her and she wasn't around, and he needed somebody to stand in for her. And the doll was finally delivered. He and the doll maker had a falling out, and he bought her dresses. He sat her at the head of his dinner table when they had company. He took her to the opera. And then one night in Paris, his neighbors phoned the police to say that there was a naked body of a woman lying in the snow behind Kokoschka's house, and it was the doll. So Severn and I, Severn, whom I've known since she was 1, because she was around for the farm show.
And this is Paul Thompson's
daughter,
Anne England's daughter.
Yeah. So Severn came to me and we talked about the doll and how it was going to be used and what feeling they wanted to have from it. So I built the doll and spent a lot of time weighting her and jointing her so that, if you sat her down, she'd sit. If you put her hand on something, the hand would stay where it was put.
And tell me about the joints again. So was this, did your experience in puppetry inform the jointing?
Yeah.
And then were they very much large-scale versions of those kind of joints? Or
sort
did you do
of,
lots of innovation?
Yeah, very, very similar, and Severn and I worked a little bit on the doll manipulation so that she could make it look as if it lived. And actually, indeed, there was a beautiful scene in the show where the doll is sitting in a chair. Severn, who played the doll maker, comes and kneels beside her and puts her head on the doll's lap. And then the doll lifts her own arm and strokes Severn's hair. You couldn't see Severn doing the manipulation at all. And her father, the respected theater director, thought it was somebody in a costume and wondered how Severin had managed to pick them up. So some brilliant acting there.
That's a testament, yeah, and testament to you who built the prop. Now tell me about this, the covering as well. You said you were kind of surprised how the covering worked out of the actual doll.
Yeah, there are some existent photos of the actual doll, and from everything I could tell from the photos, and when you do the big shows, you get a lot of photos, so you learn how to look at them closely and figure out what's going on. It looked like the fabric on the doll was very heavy velvet, thick velvet, which made no sense to me. But I figured, well, the doll maker did that. I will try and find something that is similarly dense, that has a nice thick pile like this does. I couldn't find any velvet, but what I did find was a fake fur that had a nice hand and was flexible and felt good. Still couldn't figure it out. I built my armature. I covered it in foam. I sewed a spandex cover on all of the fleshy parts so that I had a nice smooth shape. And then I put the fake fur on. And the first time I stroked the fur into place on top of that arm, I understood why, I understood why the doll maker chose velvet, because the fur compressed slightly and it gave the same sensation that you get when you touch somebody's arm or leg and there's that just slight give. The fur did that. So I feel like I connected somehow with the women who had originally built it.
It reminds me, how much do you have to rely on that kind of discovery to do your job? It doesn't sound, even when, in costumes, for example, designers will go on buying trips. They'll maybe even have swatches of the specific fabric they want, and they have a shape, and they've got a period, and they know, like they can express very specifically to the cutter what they want the shape to be and exactly what they want to look like. In props, it sounds like there's a lot left up as far as decisions and structure goes to the builder. And how does it feel to have to rely on, starting from almost no information about the structure? Certainly you'll have a picture, but you really have to rely on those kind of discoveries in the moment. And it must be a bit of to me, that seems really risky to go, I have 3 weeks to build this. I hope that I figure it out, right?
Well, I think the thing is that if it's finished and usable, it's great. Right.
So meeting the deadline is the most important thing, right?
It's a process of discovery every time. You have to get all this disparate information. I love to see set drawings. I love to see maquettes. I love to read the script if I can. I love to talk to somebody, whether it's a stage manager or the production props person in New York, about how things are being used and what the comments are in rehearsal, and try to put all that together and shape it into a thing that works. And if I know roughly what the style of the show is, I can make something that fits that style. And if I know how it's being used, then I can figure out how to make it.
And this leads us to the next discussion about communicating with a designer. You've mentioned the things that the designer provides, but if you had to sort of outline what the ideal package you would get, or the ideal set of resources you require from the designer, is a drawing sort of the top of that, or is it not always necessary? I mean, you said before that to me earlier that you only receive drawings for about half of the props that you build, and the rest is all just resource materials. Yeah. So, is there an ideal that people should strive for when they're communicating with a props builder?
It's a little difficult because it depends on, if you've worked together before. If you've worked together a lot, there's a language and you need less material. It depends on how specifically the prop is being used or what specifically the prop must represent. Dimensions are always good. That's really key. And a general feel for the whole show. Like, as I said, it's good to see maquettes. It's good to see sketches of the set itself, so I know the world into which we're putting our things. And it's also nice to have room to play, room to discover, room to contribute to the design. So personally, and this isn't everybody, but personally, I like it when I've got a bit of room to play. That makes it more interesting, more challenging, more fun. So if you can hit that very fine balance, it's good.
And how about the responsibility for decisions? I mean, the designer, I guess, has the final say, or even the director has the final say on whether something stays or goes. But the designer, often a theme, especially in costume design, arises, or a discussion I've had with friends, a theme arises where there seems to be an over-reliance on the craftsperson to make the kind of decisions that are typically in the designer's realm. But from what you're telling me, you're happy to make those decisions. Is that really designer specific about how much you rely upon them? Or oftentimes this conversation occurs in the context of, well, you've got a week to build 17 things, and now you're asking me to design them as well. Well, that's not my job, and you're not paying me to do that. I only have so much time.
On the other hand, if you give me a week to build 17 things and the room to build them the way I want, that allows me not to lose my mind. Right. And you have to remember that on some of the Broadway shows, I will never meet the designer. I will never, ever even speak to the designer. Sometimes I don't even speak to the design associate. I just speak to the production props person.
Wow. And explain to me that relationship. So you've got somebody who's the head of props for that production.
Yeah.
Who is contracting out a specific series of props to you. Would there be a bunch of different shops building stuff?
Yeah.
There would be.
So if you're doing a Broadway show, typically there is a production props person, and that person is responsible for making all of the props happen. Okay. So they might go out and buy, or they might hire a buyer. They may build some stuff themselves, or they may hire an individual or a shop or a series of shops to build the things that are needed. They'll be in rehearsal every day. And when the show gets on stage, they will be backstage running that show.
Oh, okay.
So it's a very different system than we have here. But they're there all the time in rehearsal, looking at rehearsal with a props person's eye. So you get very different information from them. They'll have already thought through what are going to be the problems, and if they're good, they'll let you suggest the solutions first and then put in their 2 cents worth. But it's a really interesting. We did Little Mermaid, and the props guy was fantastic, as most of them are. But I never even met the designer. It all came through my props guy.
That's a really different experience, right?
Yeah.
From doing small to medium size, even just most Canadian theater, you've got such a direct line of communication.
Yeah.
It's incredible. So let's move on to training. You trained. I mean, you trained on the job.
Yep.
Right from the beginning, and figured out your own kind of solutions.
Yeah.
Given that all that experience, would you recommend that process to somebody just starting out, or is there a series of things you would recommend they train in first in order to prepare them for that experience, or does it depend?
I think it's always probably good to have some grounding and love of theater. It's good to have an enthusiasm about research. It's good to have an eye for detail. Beyond that, I think it's probably really valuable to have a basic theatrical education, and by that I mean being backstage as a crew member, being on stage as an actor, knowing how to work basic tools, sewing machines, bandsaws, glue guns, scale rulers, all that kind of stuff. So I think if you go somewhere where you have the opportunity to be exposed to all those things. Work in wardrobe a little bit, hang lights, run a lighting board, run a sound board, understand what all of that means. I think you're in a good place.
That's great. And tell me about your work with the Banff Center on the competencies.
Oh, that was really fun.
Yeah.
The Banff Center was a few years ago putting together a list of competencies, a list of important skills for many of the areas of theater. And they phoned me and a number of other people, a number of other props builders across Canada, and a designer and a stage manager, and they got us all to Banff for a weekend and locked us in a room and asked us questions about what we felt were the necessary skills that a props builder should at least be aware of, if not have as something they can use regularly in their arsenal.
That seems to be, I now work as a paramedic, and competencies are, especially in the medical field, they've been a long time. They've been a part of that field for a long time. But there are a certain number of things that you have to have as a minimum requirement to enter that position. And to have that in theater, I imagine that everyone had an idea of what those were when you're designing a theater training program. But to have some sort of national standard that's a radical idea.
It's great.
It's
great.
Yeah. To have everyone trained at the same level.
Yeah.
What? That's an incredible idea.
It's a little scary, but
yes, that's true. And do you think that is given? Well, first of all, describe what came out of that experience. What was the result of that discussion?
Well, it was a lot of fun. It was interesting to hear everybody talk about the things that they thought were important and realize that we all pretty much thought the same way. It was interesting. The gentleman who was running the weekend was excellent. He was an excellent moderator. But, we got into some really fine tuned conversations with him, trying to explain the difference between putting metallic paint on something and metallic leaf and making something out of the actual metal and all the nuances that go with that. I think it was really instructional. It reinforced for me how much I don't know how to do and how much I don't know, which was, humbling, but most of life is. So. And it was just great to get together with a bunch of other props people and talk about what we feel is important in terms of skill and knowledge.
And what was the result? Before you were describing the difference between a carpenter, a stage carpenter, or a shop carpenter, and a scenic artist and a prop builder. What was the result?
Something that we're very smug about. I think the carpenters had maybe a list of 6 or 7 things in rather large print, and the scenic artists had a page of stuff in sort of medium-sized print, and we had almost 3 pages in very small print of things we need to do.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And so, where does one start? I mean, you're a senior, nationally renowned, probably prop builder, right? And you're saying there's so many things you don't know.
Yeah.
So somebody who's just starting off in the business is going to be at a loss to they're going to have to make things up every time they approach.
Yes,
project.
but that if we then go back to our earlier conversation about the daring do and arrogance of youth, when you're young, you figure that you know most of it, and I think it's only as you become more experienced that you realize that you don't know most of it. I think just dive in. Just dive in.
And what qualities would you describe as the paragon of a props designer builder? Like, what are the things you need to understand the most?
Sense of humor, curiosity, a desire to learn, a desire to experiment, interest in and enjoyment of research, ability to work collaboratively and collectively, a strong ego, but not an overriding ego because you're always interpreting someone else's vision. It's not your own art. It's somebody else's art. It's a collective piece of art. So you can't get too precious about your own stuff.
What was the rule about the first prop?
We find that when we're building a show, the first prop we finish is usually the one that gets cut.
Right. So you have to choose which one. You don't want to choose the one that's going to take you the longest to build.
No.
To build first, or the most intricate, weird thing, right?
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. I want to touch on the last couple of things before we get to the silver ticket. I want to touch on this idea of a stewardship of specialized knowledge. Christina Padubiak and I had the discussion about the loss generally, or a winnowing of expertise in theatrical craftsmanship. Mm-hmm. How do you think that that's true? Do you think that we're losing information? One, and number two, how do you think that we should strive to record that information, or is there a way we can get ahead of that loss and try to preserve it?
That's a tough one. I sometimes feel like theater is the last bastion of anybody knowing how to do anything.
Especially with the advent of 3D printers, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so much is mechanized and assembly line, and I don't know if there are very many people left in the world who can put a car together. Never mind a shoe or a crown. So yeah, absolutely. I think we should try and record, try and teach, try and pass on as much as we can. I think it would be great, although I can't find anybody to do it, to have somewhere where we all could go to take master classes in whatever. Here's a week where we're all going to build stuff out of brass and glass. I know that Stratford, some of the alumni from Stratford Prop Shop do occasional courses, but I'd love to see it more better supported and more organized.
That's a great idea. Is there a central text for prop building or for...
Not that I'm aware of. Yeah, not that I'm aware of.
A lot of the knowledge is passed on through, or most of it's passed on through apprenticeships and things like that, right?
Yeah, and I have a lot of books on, how to embroider, how to cast in plastic, how to make wicker furniture, how to make a basket, how to, make things. So all of those, how to upholster. So certainly you can pass a lot of the craft on, and a lot of it exists still in written form, but not as a prop Bible per se, but as discrete disciplines and projects.
Right. Okay, and then let's turn to the Silver Ticket. Now, the Silver Ticket is an award given every year by the Dora Mavor Committee here in Toronto to a senior theater artist who has made a significant contribution to the community, and it gives you basically access to all the theater shows in the TAPA playbook, right? Like anybody who belongs to TAPA, you can go see the show for free, right?
That's right.
Two tickets.
Two tickets. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, you're everyone's best friend now.
Yeah.
Now, explain to me that experience and how you felt. First of all, finding out that you were going to be the recipient.
Well, it started with a phone call, as everything does. A gent from TAPA called to say that I had been nominated by Malcolm Black for this award. And he said, if you could send us some kind of resume so we have an idea of what you do, that'd be great. And no one ever gets it on the first try. So you won't be picking it up this year, but never mind. It's a great honor to have been nominated. Which made me cranky. But anyway, so that was exciting. That was, I thought, wow, what a lovely gesture of Malcolm to do this. And I dutifully put together sort of a CV that kind of indicated some of the stuff that I'd done. And then wrote an artist statement just talking about, I love theater. I love theater. And, I think it's important to teach people what I know and keep learning and keep engaging and make collective, collaborative art. And that went away and there was nothing. So I figured, oh, well, that was lovely. Very cool. And then Jacoba called me to say that I had won it. And I started to cry. Craftspeople in theater generally aren't recognized. And that's okay. We learn that really fast, and you bask in the reflected glory of how the show looks and how the designer does and all of that stuff. So it was very, very moving, and I felt like it was for everybody. All of us that toil here and elsewhere, making props, making costumes, making sets. An award for the craftspeople.
Yeah, that's important. I think that I didn't. I don't know if people know who. I don't think people know who the nominees are every year. But having attended the Doras, my whole section were just ecstatic that you had won.
That's so cool.
Because of, obviously because of your body work, but also because of that idea of recognizing craftspeople as an important collaborator in the theater, especially with the recent Tony's sound design debacle they had down there. And then the discussion that resulted of, well, what's a theater artist and what do you consider a collaborator? And I think props is one of those things that people forget to acknowledge, often enough.
Well, you just go to the prop store, right, and get it.
Yeah. Well, somebody's small theater now. Who builds for a small production? There's not really a lot of stuff that's built, especially from scratch. It's most of it is found or bought or borrowed from pre-existing shops, and so. You go to places like Reb's Choice or Shadowland or the Shaw or Stratford and go, oh my God, there's entire shops here building things from scratch.
Yeah.
You showed me a cabinet that someone sent you a picture of, original, beautiful. I'm not sure what the period was. It's probably modern.
It's Art Deco.
Art Deco, there you go. Yeah. And then you just built it. You just built a real version from the picture, a copy that looked incredible. It seems to me that kind of craftsmanship is... you can find somebody who's a furniture builder, and you can find somebody who's a metal worker, and you can find somebody who upholsters and somebody who builds puppets. But to find all of those things in one person,
a couple of people,
right, is an incredible, incredible amount of talent. So well deserved.
Well, thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Is there anything else or advice you would have with people who are considering entering into the theater in general, and specifically getting into a crafts position in theater? What is it? Something that you would highly recommend, or is it something that you recommend with caution?
Well, I love it, so I would recommend it to anybody. But the caveat is that it's an uncertain lifestyle. It's not lucrative. And you have to work. You have to work really hard. If you think that it's going to be easy and you'll gain accolades and, retire in a $9 million mansion, probably not. That would be, for the video game developers.
Well, that's great. Thank you so much.
No problem. It was fun.
Props artisan Fina MacDonell speaking to me from the Reb's Choice Prop Shop in July of 2015. Next time, set and costume designer Michael Gianfrancesco joins me from the Shaw Festival. The music for this podcast is by Vern Good. The voiceover is by Gabriel Cropley. Please go to iTunes and give us a review. It'll help get the word out about this podcast and share the history of theater design in Canada. And you can follow us on Twitter at The Title Block CA and on Facebook.com/The Title Block Podcast. You can send comments and requests by email to thetitleBlock@gmail.com. And don't forget that if you like this show, support us on patreon.com. Feel free to share this with your friends, colleagues, students, and teachers, or listen to it while you try to size your Dutchman. I'm Michael Kruse, and I'll see you next time on The Title Block.